Hey gang, welcome back. So, when most people think about Chainsaw Man, they probably imagine a guy with chainsaws bursting out of his head and arms, carving through monsters in showers of blood. But before any of that, Denji was just a starving teenager who was trapped by his dead father's debt and was forced to sell his own organs just to make a living, with a dying little devil named Pochita as a friend. And together, the two of them became something that the world had never experienced before. A devil hybrid like no other. But how did Chainsaw Man's body actually work? Why do devils become stronger through fear? And how did one chainsaw-wielding devil become so terrifying that even the most powerful beings in hell learn to fear it? Today, we're going to explore the demonic anatomy of Chainsaw Man. Let's begin.
What was Denji's life like before he became Chainsaw Man? Before becoming Chainsaw Man, Denji was just another ordinary human with no intention of changing the world and becoming a hero. He had accepted that poverty would be a permanent part of his life. As mentioned earlier, his mother had died because her illness was untreatable, and Denji himself was diagnosed with a serious heart condition at a young age. From that moment, his life began to decline progressively as he grew up, and he stopped believing that something good could happen to him. After Denji killed his abusive father in self-defense, the Yakuza fabricated a suicide story so that Denji would inherit his father's enormous debt. In exchange for their protection, they forced him to pay off tens of millions of yen. This turned Denji into another slave who was drowning in debt. The Yakuza promised to let him live by making him sell devil's corpses to pay off his father's debt and to be their servant. The criminals threatened to kill him if he didn't fulfill their desires. He received only a tiny fraction of the money earned from selling the devils he killed. He didn't believe there was any hope that somebody would rescue him, and he didn't see another opportunity to survive. He was used to living in poverty, and he was just a poor orphan who had nobody who would care about him and his needs. The Yakuza controlled his desires, and they determined when he would die. They took most of the money earned from the devils he killed to pay off the debt. Denji needed to continue killing devils to earn money to pay off his father's debts. It wasn't the best situation for him to change his life and be privileged to pursue his dreams. He was used to living in poverty and living like an orphan without having any chance to improve his own life. That was why he followed the rules set by the Yakuza and continued to work as their servant and devil hunter. It was his only means of survival, and it was his only chance to keep living. Denji tried to be healthy and to keep his body from being used by criminals who respected the money earned by killing devils. He knew how to fight devils and used his body to its fullest extent to avoid being killed by stronger monsters. Even though he had very few chances to improve his life, Denji always thought that somewhere and someday something good would happen. He ate cheap food and trained a lot to keep himself strong enough to fight monsters and at least have a small chance to survive. He had little hope that something remarkable would happen to him, but his path crossed with the Chainsaw Devil one day. The devil was badly injured and unable to help himself, so Denji took him and allowed the Chainsaw Devil to use some of his blood to heal his wounds. Later, the two became best friends, and the Chainsaw Devil, called Pochita, was Denji's only friend and hope for a better future. Denji had even sold one of his eyes, one kidney, and one testicle to help pay off this enormous debt. His dreams were very simple but beautiful, and he wanted to eat bread with jam and to sleep in a comfortable bed. All the disappointments and failures he had earlier in his life became the driving force that led him to Chainsaw Man. How did Denji meet Pochita, and what made their bond different from a normal devil contract? During one of the hunting missions, Denji discovers a particularly horrifying sight on the ground. A small orange little devil with a chainsaw attached to his head and a pull cord at the back is lying on the ground. The devil is dying of a grievous injury. According to Denji, this sight didn't inspire any horror in him. It appeared as if someone had abandoned a pet animal. In the given circumstances, the devil wasn't worth killing even though it was Denji's first mission. Denji pitied the miserable devil that survived mortal injuries. He acted out of compassion and saved the devil's life. The rescue was the reason for Denji's survival, as the little chainsaw demon later saved his life more than once. Denji named the little devil Pochita, and the two eventually became partners. The relationship between the devil and the human was one of a kind. Devil contracts generally allow humans to borrow a devil's power in exchange for a price, but Pochita's relationship with Denji was very different because the two genuinely cared about each other. Pochita and Denji's relationship was based on mutual trust, with Pochita becoming Denji's companion while Denji relied on him for protection. From now on, Pochita became Denji's strongest ally and the most powerful protector. The convenient little devil can be transformed into a chainsaw. Thus, Pochita and Denji were able to kill numerous demons. Further, Denji learned to use the little devil as a weapon to be able to protect himself. Denji and the little devil became a family because Pochita always supported and helped Denji. This was a rare occurrence in the series because most devils did not stay with their human employers for very long. The devils usually exploit the humans and kill them eventually. Pochita was a caring little devil who supported Denji during his darkest hours. He became Denji's closest friend and eventually remained with him as the heart of Chainsaw Man. Pochita was far more powerful before he encountered Denji, as Chapter 87 reveals that Chainsaw Man had previously fought with the Weapon Devils and the Four Horsemen before disappearing and later appearing on Earth in a completely changed near-death form. There are multiple reasons for such assumptions. One of them is that the grievous injuries that could only be the result of the violent confrontation. As it was mentioned above, the cause of the injuries was unknown. However, many fans assume that they were most likely caused during the fight between Pochita and the Weapon Devils and Makima. It was canonical that the little devil was injured during this particular fight, but the extent of his injuries was never explained. Thus, it was possible that the injury wasn't fatal, but it greatly weakened the little devil. The Weapon Devils were powerful enough to take part in a major battle against Pochita alongside the Four Horsemen. It was questionable whether Pochita could withstand such a powerful enemy alone. It appeared that he couldn't because after the battle he was much weaker than before. The manga later revealed that Pochita was much stronger than his weakened form initially suggested. It can be assumed that the little devil was incredibly strong before he met Denji and was significantly injured during the battle with the Weapon Devils. It may be concluded that Pochita eventually saved Denji's life. First, he was the one who granted Denji's powers. Second, Pochita allowed Denji to protect himself and make him stronger. However, before that, the little devil was Denji's first ally that allowed him to live through the darkest times of his life. How did Denji actually die, and how did he come back as Chainsaw Man? The misfortunes of Denji came to an end when those who once employed him decided that they no longer required his services. Having secretly bonded with the zombie devil, the Yakuza tricked Denji into coming to an abandoned warehouse where he was to receive a new task. However, the zombie devil turned the Yakuza members into flesh-eating zombies and told them to finish the pesky man off. Overwhelmed by the wave of undead attackers, both Denji and Pochita were devoured and tossed into a dumpster, where Denji's misery was supposedly over. However, Pochita refused to give up on his master, even in death. As Denji's body was discarded, the Chainsaw Devil presented him with one last contract. All Pochita asked in return for his help was for Denji to let him be his heart and experience the simple joys that Denji often spoke of. Thus, the Chainsaw Devil replaced Denji's ravaged heart with his own, transforming the man into a devil hybrid. Instead of simply healing Denji's wounds, Pochita became his heart, allowing Denji to transform into Chainsaw Man. From then on, every time Denji pulls the cord from his heart, massive blades erupt from his head and arms, turning him into the fearsome Chainsaw Man. Chainsaw Man swiftly exited the dumpster, finishing off the remaining zombies and beheading the responsible zombie devil. However, his new form didn't go unnoticed, as Makima decided to recruit the strange hybrid. Noticing that Denji was not a devil, but rather a human with extraordinary abilities, she spared him and enrolled him in the ranks of the public safety devil hunters. How are devils actually born from fear? What one must know about the universe of Chainsaw Man is what exactly leads to the creation of devils. It's not some divine source or even the work of enemy mages, but rather the innermost fears of humanity itself. Their forms, as well as the types of devils that manifest, are inspired by the concepts that humanity fears the most. Most often, the devils are simply named after the ideas that inspire them. It's enough to think of one concept and it may already come to life in the form of a devil. The more humanity fears a concept that a devil represents, the stronger that devil becomes. The link between concepts and devils is the association with the ideas that give them power and form. It's not fixed, however, as the amount of fear associated with particular concepts may vary, thus changing their power. The more people fear things they fear, the stronger the corresponding devils will be. And it's also essential to understand these concepts linked with devils as inseparable from them, as the gun devil became enormously powerful because of humanity's fear of guns and gun violence. Much lower in hierarchy and power are zombies, and their place is explained by their insignificance and the lack of fear they inspire. The concept they're associated with, fleshed dead creatures, is not as powerful and dangerous, and its embodiment, as a result, is also lower. It has enough power, however, as demonstrated by the fact that it was enough for the zombie devil to help the Yakuza lure Denji into a trap. What's the difference between a devil, a fiend, and a hybrid? The creatures associated with devils in Chainsaw Man are not obtained in the same way. Despite the similarities between them, there's a significant difference between a pure devil, fiend, and a hybrid, and this difference lies in their creation. It's this feature that gives each of these creatures their unique appearance, abilities, and personality. First, pure devils are the most basic type of supernatural creatures in this world. They've existed long before humans, and the characteristics of each devil are formed around its concept. That's why they're completely different from humans, having traits that are not inherent to human nature. Further, devils can possess humans by inhabiting their dead bodies, thus transforming them into fiends. A devil can possess a human corpse, creating what's known as a fiend. Because a devil inhabiting a human corpse is generally weaker than it was in its original form, fiends tend to be less powerful than the devils they came from. However, fiends still possess supernatural abilities, albeit weakened, as well as a devil's personality in mind. The most well-known example of a fiend is Power, whose body was taken over by the Blood Devil, thus giving him his blood-red appearance, and the devil himself took the name Power. However, devils can also merge their souls with that of a human, thus creating a hybrid. Devils can also merge with humans to create hybrids, allowing the human to retain their consciousness while gaining the devil's transformation abilities. At the same time, they receive an extraordinary ability from the devil, which varies depending on the one who invited them to inhabit their body. Unlike fiends, hybrids retain their human consciousness while gaining the ability to transform and use the powers of the devil that they're fused with. Denji is the most famous example of a hybrid, as Pochita did not take over his body when he died, but rather entered his heart while he was still alive, thus becoming a part of him. In fact, Denji is neither human nor devil, but something entirely different. Unlike fiends, hybrids can retain their human consciousness while gaining the ability to transform and use powers of the devil they're fused with. In conclusion, it should be noted that these three classifications are crucial when studying the anatomy of any character in Chainsaw Man. How does Denji's body actually transform into Chainsaw Man? The transformation of Denji into Chainsaw Man is one of the most interesting cases of a hybrid form as depicted in the series. It's exceptionally well illustrated by the transformation itself. Compared to most other humans who usually use devilish energy to transform, Denji does not transform in the traditional sense. While he uses devilish energy, it doesn't transform him into another being, but rather allows him to equip certain transformation parts. The transformation happens when Denji pulls the ripcord protruding from his chest, triggering his hybrid form. His transformation primarily alters his head and arms, although chainsaws can also appear on his legs. On his forehead there's a convenient chainsaw, while on his arms there are additional blades. His head transforms into a chainsaw-like structure, while the additional blades emerge from his arms. Interestingly, some elements of his clothing and body remain the same, which makes his appearance both frightening and familiar. As such, the transformation into Chainsaw Man is pretty unique, as it partially changes the appearance of the transformed. It can be classified as a hybrid transformation, and the result truly looks like a mix of Denji's human face and a devil's skull. His human body largely remains recognizable, while his head and arms undergo the most obvious changes during his transformation. His head and arms transform dramatically, while his body otherwise retains much of his human appearance. Another interesting thing about Denji's transformation is that it requires a lot of energy to be in this state. Like most devils, Denji needs blood to replenish his energy, and he needs it even more when he's using his hybrid form. Because his chainsaws are part of his transformed body, Denji can also injure himself while using them recklessly in battle. As a consequence, he can lose large amounts of blood during a battle and needs blood to replenish his strength and heal. In general, his hybrid form is pretty weak against attacks that he can't just chop off with chainsaws, and without blood, he can't heal the wounds that he receives during the battles. However, his hybrid form is also exceptionally resilient, being able to withstand far more punishment than an ordinary human could. Why is Pochita, a tiny pet-like devil, secretly the most feared devil in hell? The little being that Denji had found on the ground was much more dangerous than it appeared to be. For Denji, it was a cute little puppy that needed to be saved, but in reality, it was the infamous Chainsaw Devil. The one that was known as the Chainsaw Man, but what most devils refer to as the Chainsaw Devil, was something else entirely. The small cute creature that Pochita, as he came to be known, appeared to be, was in fact one of the most dangerous devils that had ever existed. The reason why the Chainsaw Man was feared was the specific type of power that he possessed. The power that he had was, in fact, not like many other devils' power, because when he eats certain devils, the concepts they represent can be erased from existence, along with humanity's memory of them. This particular ability of his was the main reason why most devils had great fear of it. For if they themselves had been defeated by him, they would not have had a second chance at life somewhere else in hell or on earth, as is usual for most devils when they die. Long before Denji ever became Chainsaw Man, Pochita had already devoured devils connected to some of history's most horrifying concepts. These devils included those that used to depict World War II, the Nazis, and nuclear weapons, among others. This shows how powerful the little creature that had been found on the ground by Denji was. And all this was because of a special ability that he possessed. In fact, several major concepts and events from human history had been erased from existence because of Chainsaw Man's power. This was, in fact, the last secret concerning the little companion that had helped Denji escape from his fate. For, although he appeared to be a cute little creature in need of help, he was in fact one of the most dangerous devils that had ever existed in the history of devils. How do Devil Hunter contracts physically change the human body? In the world of Chainsaw Man, it's impossible to acquire supernatural abilities at will, because there's always a hidden price for using Devil's powers. Most of the Devil Hunters who battle supernatural creatures have to make particular contracts in order to have access to some Devil's abilities in exchange for specific personal sacrifices. Compared to using conventional weapons, there are some substantial drawbacks to each contract, as terms are one-sided, and every hunter has to be aware that they will inevitably pay the price stated in the contract. First of all, every hunter has to understand the fact that the price can be different for each devil based on their individual demands. For example, it could be as simple as taking a drop of blood from the hunter who initiated the contract, or something more significant and even life-threatening. For devil hunters who make contracts, the price varies depending on the devil and the terms of the agreement. Aki Hayakawa is one of the best examples of a devil hunter who made a contract that allowed him to use incredible yet devastating powers against supernatural enemies. In exchange for the enormous power of throwing a giant nail, Aki made a contract with the Curse Devil that allowed him to summon it by stabbing an enemy 3 times with his nail-shaped sword, at the cost of his lifespan. It can be seen that the young man is not the only one who possesses such a costly ability. This came at a devastating cost, as every use shortened his remaining lifespan. To conclude, it's necessary to mention that the contract and the price for using Devil's supernatural powers define the relationship between hybrids and ordinary devil hunters. Basically, each contract represents a personal sacrifice made by the hunter in order to receive extraordinary devil's powers. In essence, when speaking about devil hunters in Chainsaw Man, it's crucial to mention that they're always one step closer to death due to the price paid for the contract. What made Makima's body different from every other devil in the series? Among all the devil-type characters in Chainsaw Man, Makima is the most deceptive one, as most of the other devils are clearly not human, unlike Makima, whose body was modified by the Control Devil, which took the shape of a human. First of all, Makima was not human at all. She was the Control Devil, which had manifested itself in the form of a human woman. Secondly, the Control Devil, and consequently, Makima's body, can possess almost any living creature, human or not, turning them into the property of the controller, whose body can be used to carry out their will. Nevertheless, the primary ability that made her one of the strongest devils and caused tremendous fear was her power to control other people to do her tasks. When she found Denji and saw that he was a hybrid, she enrolled him in the public safety devil hunters. However, her desire to enroll him was not sincere, as she only wanted to use his body to possess Chainsaw Man, promising to give him love and care. Although Makima appeared to care for Denji, she was ultimately manipulating him because she wanted to obtain Chainsaw Man. Even though Makima was extremely powerful and only occasionally lost due to her own mistakes, her body could still be killed. However, after Makima was killed, the Control Devil later reincarnated as Nayuta. Nevertheless, the most impressive thing about Makima was her deceptive appearance, as she was one of the strongest devils in the series and hardly seemed to be one. Why are the Gun Devil and the Darkness Devil considered near unstoppable? Although many of the devils that Chainsaw Man has encountered could be considered powerful, the Gun and Darkness Devils possess power on a whole different level. Aside from simply being tremendously strong, the power that they possess often has a major influence on the world. In its previous body, the Gun Devil is one of the most feared devils to exist due to the sheer scale of destruction that it caused. It was responsible for the deaths of approximately 1.2 million people in a single attack that lasted about 5 minutes. This places it far above many of the other devils to ever exist, most of which could only affect a local area surrounding them when they appeared. The impact that the Gun Devil has on the world makes sense when one considers the sheer power of its attack. Essentially manifesting as an endless stream of bullets at impossible speeds, the attack allows the Gun Devil to kill hundreds of people in a matter of seconds. With its power being as tremendous as it is, it's unsurprising that the Gun Devil holds a place as one of the most feared devils by the devil hunters. In fact, it holds a special place in the heart of one of the series' protagonists, Aki Hayakawa. As he was one of the victims of the Gun Devil's attack, it can be said that the Gun Devil is the reason why he became a devil hunter. Although tremendous, the impact that the Gun Devil caused and the power that it possesses barely scratches the surface of the power of another devil, the Darkness Devil. It's not that the Gun Devil's not powerful, as it possesses unimaginable power in both range and power, but rather that the Gun Devil's influence on the world is much smaller than the one caused by the Darkness Devil. The reason for this is simple. The Darkness Devil embodies one of humanity's most primal fears, the fear of darkness. This is not to say that the Gun Devil doesn't terrify people, as it does, but rather that the impact of the Darkness Devil is exponentially more terrifying. Aside from being significantly more influential on the world, the power of the Darkness Devil is so great that even the most powerful devil hunters in the world are unable to do anything against it when it appears. and so the power of the Darkness Devil is exponentially greater than that of almost any other devil in the series. In fact, the Darkness Devil is one of the most powerful entities in the entire series. How did Part 2 change the demonic anatomy rules with Asa Mitaka and the War Devil? In Part 2 of Chainsaw Man, the player gets to know another side of the relationship between devils and humans, as is the case with Asa Mitaka and the War Devil Yoru. Unlike Denji and his companion Pochita, who are united by a close friendship, Mitaka and Yoru are dependent on one another. The War Devil Yoru took over the body of Asa Mitaka. Nevertheless, the relationship between the girl and the devil is not the same as between Denji and Pochita. Probably the most remarkable difference is that Asa Mitaka is not fully controlled by Yoru. Yoru overtook Asa's body while leaving part of Asa's brain intact, allowing Asa's consciousness to remain. However, the girl is not dependent on the devil, as the two share the same body, with Yoru normally controlling it, but Asa retaining her own consciousness and being able to regain control under certain circumstances. The relationship between Asa Mitaka and Yoru is entirely different from the relationship between Denji and Pochita. In Denji's case, the boy and the devil Pochita are equal partners who depend on each other. As for the relationship between Mitaka and Yoru, it seems that neither the girl nor the devil fully possesses the other. For instance, while Yoru has Mitaka's body, the girl is unaware of the devil's abilities, so she may be surprised that her body can do what it can when under the devil's control. Likewise, Asa retains her own consciousness and can sometimes regain control of their shared body. The relationship between Asa Mitaka and the devil Yoru highlights the peculiarities of the interaction between devils and humans. Unlike Denji and Pochita, who are close friends, Asa Mitaka and Yoru share the same body while retaining separate consciousnesses. At the same time, the relationship between Mitaka and Yoru is much more complicated than the relationship between Denji and his devil companion Pochita. While Pochita loves Denji and is willing to do anything for him, Yoru only uses Asa to strengthen herself and free herself from suffering. Therefore, the relationship between Mitaka and Yoru is more hostile than the relationship between Denji and Pochita. Thus, it can be said that the relationship between Asa Mitaka and the War Devil Yoru demonstrates how complex the relationships between devils and humans can be. Part 2 of Chainsaw Man shows that devils and humans can possess each other's bodies, while remaining independent, which is unusual for most cases when humans and devils interact. How does the anime visually interpret Denji's demonic anatomy different from the manga? The anime adaptation of Chainsaw Man was able to remain true to the source material in the portrayal of the hybridity of Denji's anatomy. Remarkably, it also managed to make it even more horrifying than in the original manga. While both the anime series and the comic are successful in showcasing the utter horror of the transformation that turns Denji into Chainsaw Man, the adaptation managed to do it better, because of its more realistic approach and the special effects that highlight the monstrosity of the turned body parts. First of all, it's worth noting that while Tatsuki Fujimoto draws all the expressions and transformations of the characters in the manga, he has a specific style that makes all the drawings appear as the result of a deranged mind. Meanwhile, the anime series manages to make the hybridity of the main character even more terrifying because it looks realistic. It's easier to be shocked by the transformation because the weight and power of it are more palpable. Secondly, the special effects in the anime make it even more horrifying. The growling of the chainsaws attached to Denji's body when he transforms adds to the effect of the hideous transformation, making the viewers feel disgusted by the changing anatomy. Moreover, the special effects in the anime series are combined with intricate brushstrokes to make the transformation even more horrifying. Finally, because the adaptation uses a more realistic and dramatic approach, it's able to better portray the chaotic transformation of the main character. It enables the viewers to be amazed by the beauty of the altered anatomy and shocked by the horrific change Denji's body is undergoing. At the same time, the focus on realistic violence allows them to better understand the difference between the original anatomy of Denji and his devil form after the transformation. As a result, the adaptation is better at portraying the horror of the changed body parts, which is also helped by the special effects of the series. The movie, focusing on the Rise arc of the manga, has already expanded the story onto the big screen, using a larger-scale cinematic production to emphasize the brutality of the battles. Overall, the adaptation was able to better depict the horrifying transformation from the original comic because it used more special effects and a more realistic approach. It enabled the series to recreate the horrifying change more realistically, thus making it more frightening. So when you look at the bigger picture, the demonic anatomy of Chainsaw Man began with a story that was surprisingly human. A starving boy, a dying devil who became his only friend, and a final contract that changed everything. But from that simple beginning also came something that was far more terrifying. A hybrid body fueled by blood, a heart carrying one of hell's most feared powers, and a world where every monster was born from humanity's deepest fears. Denji never wanted to become the most dangerous being in existence. He never even dreamed of saving the world or ruling hell. He simply wanted a normal life, a warm bed, and some bread with jam. So which anime monster should we discuss next? Let us know in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.